Today, we're going to be talking about how the government can help or hurt you when it comes to your finances. Today, we're here with the author of Keep Your Life, is Garth Hassel, who's going to help us dig into chapter 6 of his book, Uncle Sam Has Your Back, or does he? Garth, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, Rob.
Hey, buddy, we just wanted to go through this. I love the quote you start this chapter off with. The most terrifying words in the English language are, "I'm from the government and I'm here to help." Famous quote from Ronald Reagan. Explain what you mean by that.
Well, look at all the broken promises we've had. Look at people whose pensions have tanked. Now I'm talking at the less than federal level, but at the same time, even with the federal pensions, if you have no cost of living adjustment in it, look at inflation as it is starting in 2022, it's going through the roof. You don't have a COLA in your pension, then it's not going to keep up. And
when you say COLA,
cost. Oh yeah, Pepsi. Cost of living adjustment. Cost of living adjustment. And we all, this is where the government comes in again. They generate the indices that measure inflation, the CPI, and there are multiple versions of that, but they're not using the one that they developed for the elderly for Social Security cost of living adjustments, for example. They're using a general urban one. The bottom line is inflation is really watching your checkbook and seeing how the numbers have to go up every month. So everyone's inflation is unique. Meanwhile, the government's been jiggering the formula over the years to make it not look as bad. Well, that doesn't change the numbers in your checkbook. So what are you going to do? Are you going to trust the government's cost of living adjustment in Social Security, for example? Or do you need a way to keep up with inflation outside of government promises?
And that's a challenge because I think, if I'm not mistaken, Social Security is like the largest building block for most Americans. Am I off on that?
No, that is generally true.
So it is a little bit nerve-wracking to think that our so-called government guarantees can be changed. I mean, theoretically, they can be changed at any time. Is that correct?
With the stroke of a pen, whatever they call permanent, they can make unpermanent.
So what are some of the recent changes that government legislation has affected financial investing, retirement, financial independence?
Well, for example, in 2016, Congress changed the thresholds to reach the top 3 tiers of the 5-tier Medicare premium schedule. So remember, a tax increase isn't just a percentage increase. It could be a lowering of the thresholds to reach those higher percentages. So suddenly you're considered a wealthier person at a lower income level, never mind that inflation makes that income less effective. But now they're considering you to be more among the wealthy, and you pay a premium on your premium for parts B and D in Medicare. And the thing is that's kind of, I call it a sneak attack, because in the case of Medicare, the law passed in 2016, but didn't really take effect or have an effect on consumers until 2018, because your Medicare premium is based on your most recent tax return, adjusted gross income, which in general is 2 years behind. So you have to plan from a retirement planning standpoint, starting at least at the latest at age 63, to have any idea what your Medicare premiums are going to be. Then of course you have to have been planning before that, if you're savvy, so that your provisional income isn't going to drive you into those higher Medicare premiums. So, one factor falls into another factor, which is why this is not for the faint of heart.
And that's the most important thing you need to know. If your head is swimming over COLA and provisional income and all these other things, don't fear. the takeaway is it's very difficult to plan when things can be changed by the government at any time, stroke of a pen. And the makeup of our government changes every few years, not just in taxes, like you said, in adjusted taxes. What about Social Security retirement age, or the spend down? It used to be at 72. It's now, or 70. Now it's at 72.
Required minimum distributions.
Thank you. You didn't do RMD, required minimum distributions.
That's a TLA. We need more TLAs. Right. 3-letter acronyms.
So it is challenging. And it's not, again, like you said, it's not just taxes. The way they calculate your Social Security, the tax on your Social Security, when you are eligible for Social Security, Medicare, and then even also if you happen to retire before full retirement age, then you have to also deal with Obamacare and the qualifications for Obamacare. It's like $1 over the maximum threshold, and you get pushed out of Obamacare, and now you're 100% responsible for those the much more expensive payments now today than they were a decade ago. So what is your answer then? What is your suggestion or solution? If it's really this confusing, it keeps changing, why bother even developing a plan if it's just going to change on us?
Because the ramifications of not planning properly are massive. And Ed Slott, who's probably the foremost expert on individual retirement accounts in the country, he's a CPA. He said that the greatest threat to your retirement outside of an extended care event, which we talked about last week, is taxes. They're going to be huge. And so many people have their retirement nest egg in a 401k or 403b or something along those lines, part of that US code gobbledygook name that hasn't been taxed yet. So they might have $1 million in their work 401k, and they think, I got $1 million. And I'm thinking, well, how much of that is yours? Because you don't have the front of the line to get to that money. Uncle Sam does. You shook your hands with Uncle Sam a long time ago saying, I'd rather not pay taxes now, hoping that taxes will be less when I'm retired, because the theory is you don't need as much income because you're not putting 20% or whatever it is into your savings. But that's neglecting the cost of what you've referred to earlier, like medical care and health insurance premiums, whether they're Medicare or what happens a lot is the older spouse is often the one who's got the best corporate benefits, providing the health insurance for the other spouse. And when that older spouse retires and loses those benefits, the other spouse is suddenly in the whole universe of the ACA, like you mentioned earlier, Rob. And oh my gosh, if you haven't planned for that, you're going to have, $1,500, $2,000 a month premium you weren't even expecting. You're going to be blindsided. How would you like to suddenly have $2,000 a month coming out of your checking account that you didn't plan on?
Right. And so is there a way to mitigate those risks? Is there a way, just like we diversify for market volatility, is there a way to diversify against potential government legislation?
There is, and that is to pay your obligations sooner than later while you know they are. If you think of your family as a business, then and if you've ever run a business, you want to work with what? Unknowns or knowns? Right. Of course, you want to work with the knowns. And if there's a good reason to believe in from 10,000 feet that the current situation is more favorable than where all the drivers are pushing the future, well, then meet your obligations today so that you have a lot more latitude later on, and you're dealing later on with more knowns than unknowns. And that known versus unknown is the tax obligation. So this is not tax evasion, it's tax optimization, it's efficiency. And so if you meet your obligations early on, now you have money to work with that you know how much is yours. And because if you position properly during the time before you go to Medicare and you need to go on the ACA, well, if your income is below certain thresholds, you get tax advantages. This is all totally legal. This is not finagling. And you can suddenly turn your $2,000 premium into a $200 premium for health insurance, but you have to position in advance. It doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, I'm so encouraged by your book and everything that you're sharing. You're breaking it down, making it simple, especially for those families that have dependents. And I'm not talking about kids. Our kids grow up and they become adults, but we do have family members, whether it's a parent or it's a spouse, that at some point in time, we are more likely than not going to take care of someone. And if you have people that you care about, and that's why you talk about in your book, keeping loved ones, right? Is that we want to create a plan that eliminate as many unknowns as possible, create more certainty by optimizing your plan best you can. And that's exactly what Garth does. Not only do I encourage you to read the book, you could download this particular chapter at the link below. You can purchase the book on Amazon. Just search Garth Hassel, and you can get the entire book. But more importantly, I encourage you to set up a 15-minute meeting just to talk to Garth and share your story. What are your family's priorities? What are the things that mean the most to you that you want to protect? And he can break it down in simple terms for you and help you develop that sort of certainty that he's talking about in this chapter. So Garth, thank you so much for joining us today.
My pleasure, Rob.
Hope people come back and join us next week for the next chapter in Keep Your Life.
Okay, we'll see you then.